Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to do a video I'm going to call Cosmere Queries. So this is going to be a series of videos where I just kind of take a random thing from one of the Stormlight books or any Cosmere book and just like overly think about it, so we can speculate a lot about it. So I've been listening to the graphic audio version of Oathbringer, and there's a part of it that kind of got me thinking. There's a part in which when, spoilers for all Cosmere stuff also, by the way. So there's a part where our group basically goes to Shadesmar, and they're all basically touching the beads in the bead ocean in order to try to get a sense on what those beads are. But everyone's able to get a sense and an impression of what these things are except for Adolin. And I thought that was pretty interesting, so I kind of want to talk about it here. So yeah, as always, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So when we get to Shadesmar and Oathbringer, everyone's basically panicking. Most of the characters have no idea what this place is, but of course Shallan has some kind of idea of where they are. She knows that they're in Shadesmar, but she doesn't have really any experience being there physically. She just tries to remember some of the stuff that Yasna said. And one of the main things, of course, Yasna said is never go into Shadesmar without a bunch of Stormlight. So she kind of starts to just kind of fumble around with it a little bit and starts to realize she gets impressions of the different beads, what they represent and what they are in the physical world. And Pattern pretty much assumes she's going to try to soul cast, and he says, I don't think soul casting is going to do much on this side because it's only going to change it in the physical realm. And she kind of fumbles her way into realizing what happens with their ability. So she, is trying to fumble through the beads in order to find something like a table or something they can use to, stand on so that they don't drown in the sea of beads and stuff. So I think that's really, really cool because I originally assumed that, of course, Shallan could touch the beads and get an impression of what everything is because she's a soul caster. I assumed Else Callers and Lightweavers would immediately be able to do this because the way in which their abilities allow them to go into Shadesmar. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's another. Is there another order that has that closeness too? Because Vinley has that ability, but I don't know if it's because of the regal thing or whatever. But in any case, I think it's basically automatically tied to those different orders of radiance. So I kind of would, of course, assume Shallan would be able to do this. So I thought it was fascinating when everyone tries to do it and everyone kind of gets an impression. So Kaladin being able to get an impression of what the beads are and what they represent on the physical side, it kind of makes sense to me because he's a Knight Radiant. He has a bond to a Spren, so therefore his soul is, bonded to a cognitive entity, which in my opinion would place him more into the cognitive realm. So it makes sense that he would get interpretations and impressions and things on the cognitive and probably spiritual level. Same way later he sees the painting from Nalthvis and is able to, get an immediate interpretation from it because it appears anyone with a significant amount of investiture can access those, little Easter egg type things. So, but that's, a little less surprising to me. So Shallan, of course. Kaladin, not surprising that he can. I noticed very explicitly this time that Adolin makes mention of the fact that he can't get an impression at all. So that's where I kind of stopped and thought about it. I'm like, huh. So Adolin can't get an impression of what any of the beads are in the physical realm. So I assume naturally that's because he has no bonds. He's bonded to a shard blade, but it's not the same as like a Nael bond or anything. So he's not as close to the cognitive realm as the other people in the party are. So it's kind of it seems like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Adolin wouldn't be able to get an impression of it. But then that makes me go back to Azure, aka Vivenna. So I'm very curious as to how that works. Because in my head, it would make a lot of sense for the Radiants to be able to do this, but I don't really understand why Vivenna is able to. So I assume it has to do, of course, with your spiritual aspect's closeness to the cognitive realm, which is why, which is the explanation I would assume, explains it for Kaladin and Shallan. But Azure, she's not tied to the cognitive realm in the same way. She's not a returned. She's only an awakener because that seems to just be an ability people on Alphas have. Period. Like awakening doesn't seem. Actually, now I'm going to think very hard about awakening. I guess if you have a connection in Alphas at all, you're able to awaken. That's an interesting thought wormhole, but that's not the current wormhole we're in right now. Okay, so Vivenna. So my best assumption here is the fact that she has the royal locks and stuff, and she can change her hair color and stuff, and she obviously still has a level of minor shapeshifting because they don't ever describe her as looking like a Shin, which is what not regular, which is what anybody with more, I guess to put it into perspective, that most people would, most people in our reality, whatever, would understand is like the classic Western features of round eyes and stuff like that. They associate with Shinovar, but there's no point in which anyone describes Azure as looking like she's from Shinovar. So she's lightly, shapeshifted her face and her body and stuff, not just her hair, but enough to look like she could be a passable Alethi. So no one really questions whether or not she's an Alethi or anything. Especially her being very warlike and stuff is probably just the automatic assumption, like of course she would be. So that implies that that cognitive shadow, that returned shapeshifting ability, the royal line still very much has. But it's kind of multiple levels of interesting as it goes into the Warbreaker lore, because you only inherit the royal locks if you're in line to inherit the throne. But since Vivenna actively abdicated the throne, and I assume like Fathin or one of their other siblings have to take over the crown of Idris, then she wouldn't be in line for the throne. So shouldn't she have lost that if that is a real tie to those abilities? So I'm not sure how that part works. And we can assume that Ciri still has all those abilities, and however her life with Suzebron went, because I assume whenever we get back to Nalthvis, it'll be long after their lifetime. But it makes me wonder, like, so is the fact that they're descended from a returned enough of a connection to the cognitive realm that counts in the same way as like a Niall bond that allows her to gain impressions over the representations of beads and stuff? So I wonder if it's like something like that. And it honestly, like, this is also another ADD thing, sorry, but like if the cognitive realm on Scadrial looks like a bunch of mist and stuff, what does the cognitive realm on Nalthis looks like? In my head, it's got to be some sort of like interesting tropical kind of visual with colors or something. Like colors would be everywhere, and those would represent the souls of humans on the physical side or whatever. And then like I don't know, like breath. I guess I'm trying to get away from the idea of it being like breath, because that would just look like mist. So it would look similar to the Scadrian subastral. So I wouldn't want that. But I'm very curious as to that. I hope we do get to see the Northfist subastral at some point. But sorry for all the ADD tangents. This is getting hilarious. But I wonder. So I guess my current theory right now is like the idea that she is descended from a returned, and as far as I can remember, we get a implication that the return that they are descended from, this is like no less than 10 generations before. So whatever that is that's passed down, that cognitive shadow DNA, I guess, whatever that means, is still so completely tied to their bloodline that it makes it all the way down to the youngest siblings, to the most recent members of their bloodline. But it kind of, so I guess to put to not even put to bed, but like my standing theory is going to be the fact that obviously they are descended from Return, and she's still a shapeshifter and has some cognitive shadow abilities, which puts her spiritual aspect much closer to the cognitive realm than a regular person. So therefore, it will make sense that she will be able to get those kind of impressions. Granted, I don't know if that is the reason, because there could be some shenanigans about having carried Nightblood for a while. There could be some shenanigans about having held so many breaths that she was able to awaken another sword, and like maybe having that much extra investiture changes your spirit web in such a way where you can be closer to the cognitive realm. I wonder if that's a thing, because I'm having that many breaths to wake an inanimate object like a sword, not even counting Nightblood, but like she clearly did it again. So, or not again, but did it since, or did it correctly, I guess I'll say. So clearly she held like a crap ton of breaths, or she did it when she got to Roshar and used Stormlight somehow. But either way, just Vivenna slash Azure is just a level of investiture manipulation and her just how much investiture she's played with. To me, I think that would eventually change her spirit web in such a way that it could explain why she's able to touch the beads and understand their representation. But it also makes me wonder, why does she still have the royal locks, and why does that connection work in the way that it does, for one, and why does it not go to whoever inherited the Idrian throne? Or does that entire generation of children, like all of them, have these abilities, and it doesn't matter? Or did something else happen after the book that, like, nobody ascended the Idrian throne, so like it messes up the way in which that inherits? There's actually, okay, I guess maybe my next thought hole will probably end up being about Warbreaker, because that's leading me down a thought hole. So yeah, but I find it very fascinating that Adolin isn't able to get any kind of impression from the beads. So I wonder if that holds true for pretty much everyone. So I wish everyone would have seen that painting that Kaladin saw also, because I wonder if like Shallan would have seen something, if it would have been something related to her parents or something like that, because Kaladin's worried about Dalinar at this moment. So seeing the, Nine Shadow champion of Odium or whatever after he had that other little vision, like it kind of makes sense. So I wonder if it would be something specific to, Shallan, or if like Azure looked at it, would she see something about Nightblood or something? Like, I'm very curious about that kind of stuff. So I wonder what other kind of ways are regular humans just completely limited, because there are, they make mention of the fact that there are a bunch of other humans in the cognitive realm. So, I mean, granted, they probably wouldn't have a great need to try to manifest any of the beads on that side or anything. So it's probably a neither here nor there kind of an issue. But I still find it really fascinating. So it makes me wonder, what is that thing that allows people to do that? Apart from like probably a nice radiant bond or having a bond that's specifically tied to Shadesmar. What allows Azure to get a cognitive impression of those beads? Is it her being descendant of a return? Is it her having held just so much investiture over her lifetime? Or is it the connection she had with Vasher slash Zahel slash Nightblood? Like that entire interaction, did something like that happen? So I'm just fascinated about that idea. That was just one of the thoughts that popped in my head. I'm like, that's really cool. That's just kind of an interesting little thing. There's a lot of little tiny romantic things that like I like to think about but don't really get to talk about a lot. So yeah, that's why we're definitely going to do a lot more random kind of Cosmere queries on the channel. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below, what do you think about this thing? What do you think that gives Azure that ability, since it's not something obviously tied to the cognitive realm in the same way the Nice Radiants are? So yeah, let me know what your thoughts on the reasoning for her being able to do that. And do you think, is it because Adolin is bonded to a dead blade that he can't get the impressions? Do you think a regular human would be able to get the impressions? Let me know what you think about the whole thing in the comments down below. So yeah, as always, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and check out the Patreon if you're interested in reactions and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I will talk to y'all next time. Peace.